The parchment crinkled under their collective gaze. 1,000 gold coins. The figure was written in bold, ink-stained strokes that seemed to pulse with potential. Frizz, Liz, Lucy, and Kana stood in the dim light of the guild hall. The mission details for the fog forest laid bare before them. There was no hesitation. They turned from the master, the weight of the contract already driving their next moves. They moved to the stables. The smell of hay and leather thick in the air. A sturdy, covered wagon stood waiting. They spent the next hour checking the axles, tightening the straps, and hitching 2 draft horses to the front. The animals shifted their weight, hooves thumping against the packed dirt as the harness was secured. Lucy checked the supply crates, ensuring the ropes were taut. With a sharp snap of the reins, the horses lurched forward. The wheels groaned, then caught, biting into the gravel as the wagon pulled away from the guild gates. By midday, the road stretched out before them, a long, winding path leading toward the horizon. The sun climbed high, reflecting off the metal rims. They were moving, the mission finally underway, leaving the safety of the town behind for the uncertainty of the forest. The road ahead shifted from gravel to soft, petal-strewn earth as they rolled into Sakura Village. The air changed instantly, heavy with the sweet, cloying scent of falling blossoms. It was a place of quiet, but the silence felt brittle. The draft horses slowed, their ears flicking forward, sensing the change in the atmosphere before the humans did. The wagon came to a complete stop. 4 figures stood in the center of the path, perfectly still, blocking any forward movement. Cherry, Tina, Strawberry, and Amelia stood in a line, their presence turning the peaceful village square into a staging ground. The group on the wagon shifted. Lucy climbed down from the driver's seat, her boots crunching on the fallen pedals. She looked at the 4 strangers, then at the path they were guarding. Amelia stepped forward, leaving her companions behind. She reached to her side, pulled a wooden practice blade from its sheath, and leveled the tip directly at Lucy's chest. The wood whistled as she swung it into a ready stance, her feet planted wide. Her weight shifted to the balls of her feet. She did not speak, but the intent was clear. Lucy dropped her pack, the canvas hitting the dirt with a dull thud. She reached back, her fingers closing around the hilt of her blade. With a smooth, practiced motion, she unsheathed the steel. It caught the light, a sharp silver arc against the backdrop of the village. Amelia did not wait. She lunged, the wooden blade whistling through the air. Lucy stepped aside, the tip of the wood missing her shoulder by an inch. Steel met wood with a sharp crack, the sound echoing off the nearby houses. Sparks showered the ground as they traded blows, a rhythmic, violent dance. Amelia pressed the attack, her movements fluid and relentless, but Lucy held her ground. She ducked a sweeping strike that would have caught her ribs, pivoted on her heel, and countered. The steel blade moved in a blur, finding the gap in Amelia's defense. Lucy tapped the tip of her sword against Amelia's shoulder, a precise, controlled strike. The movement stopped instantly. Amelia froze, then let out a sharp laugh, lowering her wooden weapon. The tension that had gripped the square evaporated, replaced by a sudden, palpable shift in the air. Without a word, Amelia nodded, signaling her acceptance. The barrier was gone. The group was no longer 2 separate parties, but a single, expanded force ready to move toward the forest. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep purples as the wagon pulled into a flat, open clearing. The horses were unhitched and tethered to a nearby tree, their heavy breathing the only sound in the growing dark. The group moved with practiced efficiency. Frizz and Kana headed toward the tree line, returning with armfuls of dry branches and kindling. They stacked the wood in a tight circle and struck a flint, watching as the first orange tongues of flame licked at the logs. Meanwhile, Strawberry and Tina set to work on the supplies. They sliced fresh vegetables and carved thick slabs of beef, the scent of raw ingredients sharpening the hunger of everyone present. As the meat began to roast over the fire, the crackle of fat hitting the embers filled the space. The group sat in a circle, the firelight casting long, dancing shadows against their faces. No one spoke. The exhaustion of the day settled into their bones, but the silence was no longer tense. It was the quiet of a team finding its rhythm. They passed the food around, the steam rising from the plates. The morning light failed to penetrate the canopy as the wagon rolled into the fog forest. Gray mist clung to the ground, swirling around the wheels like living smoke. The trees grew thick, their branches twisted into jagged shapes that blocked out the sky, turning the path into a narrow, suffocating tunnel. The horses slowed, their ears twitching at the unnatural silence. After an hour of steady travel, the path ended abruptly at a jagged stone archway. It stood alone in the clearing, pulsing with a rhythmic, dark energy that made the air vibrate. The group climbed down, the crunch of their boots on the damp earth sounding unnaturally loud. Lucy stepped forward, her gaze locked on the archway. She knelt in the dirt, drawing a rough map with a sharp stick, marking the layout of the interior. She looked up, her eyes scanning the group. "We move in pairs," she commanded, her voice cutting through the heavy mist. "Stay close. Watch the corners." The group moved into position, their hands tightening on their weapons. The darkness within the archway seemed to reach out, cold and heavy. They stepped across the threshold, leaving the last of the daylight behind. The air inside turned frigid, smelling of damp stone and ancient decay. The darkness inside the archway was absolute, broken only by the faint, rhythmic pulse of the walls. They moved in pairs, boots silent on the cold stone. Without warning, the shadows detached from the corners, coalescing into jagged, lunging forms. Frizz and Liz slammed their shields forward, catching the first wave of dark energy with a metallic ring. The impact shuddered through their arms, but they held their ground. Behind them, Cherry and Tina pivoted, their weapons flashing as they struck at the shifting silhouettes. The group moved in perfect synchronization, rotating positions to cover every blind spot. Steel bit into the cold air, carving arcs of light through the gloom. They fought through waves of stone golems, the heavy thud of stone against stone, echoing through the chamber. Every lunge cost them, every parry drained their reserves. Their breathing grew ragged, heavy, and labored. Sweat beaded on their brows, dripping onto the stone floor. The shadows were relentless, reforming as quickly as they were struck down. Lucy signaled a retreat to a tighter formation, her movements precise even as her muscles burned with fatigue. They were a single, functioning unit. The shadows retreated, sucked back into the cracks of the stone walls. A sudden, heavy silence descended, pressing against their ears. Frizz wiped sweat from his face, his chest heaving. The chamber floor trembled. It started as a low vibration, rattling the teeth in their jaws, then escalated into a violent, rhythmic thudding. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the ground cracked open. From the gloom, a massive, multi-limbed form surged upward, blocking the path ahead. It let out a roar that echoed off the cavern walls, a sound like grinding stone and tearing metal. The force of the noise sent the group stumbling back. The creature moved with unnatural speed, its limbs lashing out, striking the stone pillars and sending shards of rock flying. Chaos erupted. Lucy shouted a command, but the sound was swallowed by the beast's screeching. The team scattered, diving behind debris to avoid the sweeping limbs. Every movement was now frantic, a desperate scramble to find footing on the shifting, unstable floor. The boss lunged, its weight slamming into the ground. The beast roared, its limbs whipping through the air like iron chains. Amelia didn't retreat. She sprinted toward the monster, sliding across the slick stone floor to duck under a massive swinging claw. She leaped, driving her blade into the creature's flank, forcing it to pivot and snap its jaws toward her. That was the opening. Lucy saw it instantly. She pushed off the cavern wall, her boots finding purchase on the uneven ground. She surged forward, her weapon held low, and lunged into the space Amelia had cleared. The blade sank deep into the monster's core. The creature froze, its limbs locked in midair, trembling violently as the force of the strike rippled through its frame. The beast let out one final choked sound before its form began to fracture. Cracks of light spread across its surface. With a sound like shifting sand, The massive form collapsed inward, shedding its weight until nothing remained but a pile of fine, gray dust. Lucy stepped toward the pedestal, her boots crunching on the layer of dust that had once been the boss. She reached out, gripping the iron handles of the heavy chest. It groaned under the weight, but she hauled it free, the metallic clatter echoing against the stone. The others gathered around, their faces smudged with soot and sweat, eyes fixed on the glimmer of gold spilling from the lid. They did not linger in the dark. They hauled the chest through the stone archway, leaving the stale, trapped air of the dungeon behind for the cool breeze of the forest night. Outside, the sky was a deep, velvet black. They found a clearing a short distance from the entrance and set to work. Frizz and Kana gathered dry branches, snapping them into pieces to feed a growing flame. The fire caught, sending sparks spiraling up toward the canopy. They dragged a large, flat stone near the heat and laid a massive slab of meat across it. The fat hissed and bubbled, releasing a rich, savory scent that cut through the damp forest air. They sat in a circle, the firelight casting long, flickering shadows against the trees. Nobody spoke for a long time. They simply watched the meat brown, the hunger of the long battle finally catching up to them. When the meal was ready, they carved it into thick portions, the steam rising in the chill air. They ate with their hands, the taste of the roasted meat grounding them, anchoring them to the reality of their survival. The gold sat nearby, a silent testament to the risk they had taken. They leaned back against the logs, the warmth of the fire soaking into their tired limbs, the long, brutal mission finally behind them.